Wi-Fi Sheep would like to say a huge thank you to all of you that kindly support us. Help us continue to bring new videos like this. Join patreon.com/Wi-Fi Sheep from just $1 a month. Hello and welcome back to youtube.com/Wi-Fi Sheep with me, Tom. In today's video, we're continuing to review some of the rather fantastic wireless communication modules kindly sent to me by Reyax.com, who are the Taiwanese-based electronics manufacturer specialising in these kinds of devices. Last time we looked in some detail at the RYLR 998 LoRa UHF radio transceiver modules. A link to that review video should be on screen now. However, today we're going to change transmission technology slightly, going from UHF radio to Bluetooth, and take a look at the Reyax RYBG211 Lite, a single standalone low power modular unit. So let's take a close look at today's device. So this is the Reyax Technologies RYBG211 Lite. And it gives you the firmware version, and it's a single piece unit. So let's take a look inside. There's little anti-static lock bags. Just open up. We have here, this is probably another microcontroller ARM-based chip. And you can see here, this is the aerial, which is kind of built into the silk screen of the device. The pin out is very similar as before. Just underneath, you can actually see the pin outs that are labelled. And it's a very similar pin out to before. So you've got ground, voltage, reset, and then you've got TX and RX, which are on these two here. So yeah, it's pretty much the same pin out as before. As with the other devices, it's important to remember that this uses 3 volt or 3.3 volt logic, not 5 volt. If you run 5 volts into this, you're going to have problems. So we've taken a basic look at the device, and now I want to do a quick setup and test. The easiest and quickest way to do that is to turn to my trusty Raspberry Pi 400. You don't have to use a 400, you don't actually have to use a Raspberry Pi technically, but it's just easier. Because we need to use the GPIO pins which are here, they're a little bit of a pain to tap into. So some of you may have seen in a recent video, I bought this little breakout adapter. Now the Raspberry Pi is all set up, but it's not powered up at the moment, which is important. So we're going to put the adapter in. And you see that now gives me a series of color-coded and easily accessible, and of course labelled pins. Let's make sure that's in. There we are. If you go onto the PDF downloads, from the main Reyax.com website, link in the description of the video, you can see the pin out, so it's actually not too difficult to sort this out. So what we want to do is we want to power this up, and we're going to use the UART protocol so the Pi can talk to the board. To do that, we need 4 jumper leads, 2 for voltage and 2 for transmission and receive data. The voltage cables, and remember, we're powering from 3.3 volts, not 5 volts. So 3.3 is here, it's the yellow. And ground, we can pick any ground we want, so we'll pick the ground. That one there. Then on the device, voltage is labelled as VCC. So 3.3 volts is going to go there. And ground is the opposite side. There. Bearing in mind this is all switched off at the moment. Then we want to add TX and RX serial. Now these are pins 14 and 15. So we'll put 2 more cables into 14 and 15, right next to the ground we just used. And making sure these are the correct way around. Do you want to go TX to RX, RX to TX, which should be that way around. We can leave the reset pin empty, we won't need to use that. So that should be the correct way around. Just make sure you've got your correct voltage and you've got your positive and negative the correct way around, because that can damage the board if you fry it with 5 volts or if you have the polarity the wrong way around. So with that all wired in, let's power up the Pi. Now we've booted up I'm using the stock Raspbian Linux here on the Raspberry 400, and I have Arduino IDE. It's not installed as standard, so you do need to install this. I'm not going to cover it in this video. It's quite easy to install. Okay, I'll probably either open your last thing you're working on or a new window. It doesn't really matter in which case. So we want to go to Tools, and we just want to make sure we select the correct port, which I have selected, which is TTYS0. And we now want to open the serial monitor. Now, making sure the baud rate is set to 9600, and very importantly, make sure that you have both NL and CR selected down here. If you don't, this doesn't work properly. And we now should be able to talk to the device. If I just say AT, uppercase, that's fine. It's talked back to me as an error too, but it does mean it is working. And by the way, all the what are called at commands are available in a PDF, again, available from the Reyax.com website. Okay, so what we can do now is we can test this with a Bluetooth capable device. In this case, I'm going to use this Apple iPhone. And I downloaded an app called Light Blue, which is free. And I'm just going to use that now. And you see here, if you've got the Bluetooth on, of course, and the app is connected, we've got the first service that comes up here, which is the RYBG 21X, which we'll select. And that will connect. And you can see it gives you a number of options. And we want to select this one here, which is UUID, and it starts with 4880. So we can select that. Very importantly, up in the top corner, we need to select V4 UTH-8 string as the encoding method, otherwise this doesn't work. And we can now write a new value. So now anything I put in here, so if I just put the letter H and we'll say done, you can now see here in the Arduino on the Pi that it has actually put H, has come back as a value, and I can add another value. If you say hello, for example, what it'll do, there we are, hello. So you can see we can actually now send data remotely from a phone via Bluetooth to our device, and it's actually there on the screen. Okay, so we know that bit works quite well, and what we can now do is we can do a practical example of basically having a remote control unit by using our Reyax Bluetooth controller in conjunction with another standalone device. And what I've decided to do again is choose an Arduino Nano. So I have a clone Nano board here, and I'm going to plug this into the Raspberry Pi just via mini USB, so it's mini USB to standard, and the other USB is already in, so we're going to pop that just there for a minute. On the screen, you've probably seen this because it came up when we first booted. I have a sketch which I've written here. Well, I say written, I borrowed it from somebody else and modified it, but it basically does the same thing. So basically what this does is it calls up an LED attached to pin 12, which is digital pin 12 of the Nano board, and we open up a character string here called main data. In the setup, we're going to tie the pin, which is pin 12, which we're now calling LED, as an output. We're going to tie it or pull it low. We're going to start a serial at 9600 baud, and we're going to just print out on the serial that we're working. In the main loop, we're going to check there's something actually available in the serial buffer, and we're going to read into character from the serial what is actually available. So that's what main data then equals. And then we're going to check. So if main data equals 0, then we're going to tie the LED low, which will turn it off, and we're going to print it's off. And if we run and we pull high, so we type 1, that's going to pull the LED high, and we'll write LED on. And that is in a loop, so this piece of code will just keep looping constantly. What we need to do now is flash this to this Arduino Nano. Now, bearing in mind, we've just been in the wrong mode. So we've been in serial mode. So we now need to make sure we're in USB mode and make sure that we've got the correct board, which is Arduino Nano selected. My board uses your bootloader. Yours probably will need the new bootloader. So if it doesn't work first time, check which bootloader you've got running. And I should be able to upload this now. It will compile the source code for me. And we've done successfully. So we can now take the Nano board out. So just push the Pi 400 out of the way in a minute, because I now want to show you this breadboard circuit which I've built for us to use with our module. So the components on here at the moment, we've got some jumper wires. I'll explain what they do in a minute. We've got an LED and we have what I think is a 1K resistor, and that's going to ground. We also have here a level shifter board, because if you remember me saying that Arduino Nanos use 5-volt logic and the Reyax RYBG211, which is a mouthful, uses 3.3 logic, so you can't run 5 volt into 3 volts, you will blow something up eventually. So the device here, the module sits here, and this power rail down here is running, or will be running, 3.3 volts and ground. So we've got 3.3 volts running into the device here, we've got ground here, and because we're only going to be running data one way, we're going from transmit, which is TX, through here as a 3.3. It's then going into the level shifter as a low channel. It's then coming out as a high channel at 5 volts, and it's going to run to the receiver end, or RX, of our Nano board. In order for the level switcher to work, we have to feed it with 5 volts and 3.3 volts. And those voltages are generated by the Arduino Nano. So if I now plug this in and get this in the correct place, which should be there. So just to show you what's happening, so we're pulling 5 volts here, which is where this jumper's going. We've got ground down here, and we're pulling the 3.3 volts here, and that's creating a 3 volt power rail needed for the device. Pin 12 or D12 is here, and that's connected to the LED, and you can see here the other side of our serial is coming through, and it's connecting here into RX0. We don't need to use TX here, and of course it runs through here to the TX transmission pin here. So I hope that's pretty clear how this works. This is last live demo. So what we'll do now is, with all that in situ and in the correct place, we'll plug the USB back in that's connected to the Pi 400. And there's a little LED that's come on here to say the power is on. Now, making sure that we are still selected on the port as USB, we need to open the serial monitor again. And you can already see it's saying working, so we know that this Pi is talking. So if we get our phone again and using the light blue app, we'll connect back in and making sure that we select hex, of course, back to UTF and write a new value. So the LED here is off. Now if I type 1, done. There we go, the LED is now on, and you can see on the screen that it now says quite clearly LED on. Let's just clear the output of that. And I already got a 0 set up as a preset, so if I tap my 0, LED off, LED on, LED off, LED on. There we are. So that shows you very quickly and very simply how we can create a remote control circuit. We're now operating this remotely from a phone via Bluetooth. And okay, I'm using an LED here, but it doesn't have to be an LED. It could be another device. It could be multiple devices or multiple components hanging off the various pins. We could expand the source code to say if you do a type 2, for example, that could power something else. We could use a relay to power more powerful devices, such as motors and things. So we could be looking at, remote control robots or all sorts. So it's really, really simple to set up actually. Once you've got your head around it, it works really, really well. So there we are, Reyax RYBG211 Lite Bluetooth transmission module. I'm sure you all agree, a really interesting and useful device. Its UART serial protocol allows it to communicate and work with a number of devices, everything from Raspberry Pi, Pi Pico, Arduino and even ESP32 to name just a few. If you want more information and the latest prices, see links in the description to this video. If you're interested in seeing more product reviews from myself here on Wi-Fi Sheep, then do check out our review and unboxing playlist. And remember to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I will see you real soon right here on the channel. Until next time, bye for now.